Yeah, for those of us who don't have the cameras, if you're able to on your camera later, that would be helpful for the speakers, especially because then they can see if you're following, whether they should speed up or slow down. But if you don't have your camera for whatever reason, that's chill. We just hope. Yeah, today is a pretty casual session. We've done a few AMAs in the past year, not as many as we did before, but for those of us who haven't been to that many AMAs, they are a chance for students to speak with software engineers working in industry, hopefully get some insight into the journeys of these software engineers and what their experiences have been like, and hope to keep it casual. I'm going to share a Slido link with everyone later, which you can use to ask your questions and to upvote questions that you like and hopefully engage with the speakers as well. Today, we have 3 speakers who are all Rocket Academy alumni, as I shared in the message earlier. And we're super lucky and super grateful for their time to be here and share with everyone today. The 3 alumni that will be sharing today are Annabel, Hao, and Yabing in that order. I'll do a brief introduction of them first, and then I'll hand it over to them for their presentations, followed by the Q&A session that we will have afterward. Thanks. Okay, so first off, we have Annabel. Annabel is currently a software engineer at Kasagi Labo, which is a Web3 company that is based in Singapore. And prior to joining Rocket Academy and becoming a software engineer, Annabel used to work as a scientist at Health Sciences Authority in Singapore. And she studied chemistry at NUS. Zihao, who's our second presenter today, he is from PTBC 4, so same as Annabel, graduated in early 2023. He is currently a TFIP trainee, which is the Tech Finance and Immersion Program trainee at UOB, the bank. And before Rocket Academy, he was working in digital marketing. So he transitioned from digital marketing to software engineering, and he studied life science at NUS. And last but not least, we have Yabing, who is our last presenter tonight. She is from FTBC 10, so graduated mid-2023, mid this past year. She's currently a software engineer at Ascenda Loyalty, a loyalty software, B2B loyalty software company in Singapore. And before Rocket Academy, she was a civil servant. So she actually worked in many ministries. She worked at IMDA, Ministry of Law, Ministry of Transport, so quite familiar with the government. And she studied government, surprise, and law at Bowdoin College. So that'll be Yabing, our third speaker of the night. And so we're going to go into the presentations now. And please keep your questions in mind. I'm going to share the Slido link in the chat, in the Zoom chat, so that, where is it? Oh, I'm going to grab it real quick. I'm going to share the Slido link in the Zoom chat. So if and when you have questions, just drop it in there. And if you can share your name when you leave a question, that'd be great so the speakers know who's asking, and then upvote the questions that you like. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our first presenter, who will be Annabel.
Thanks, Kai. Just give me a moment while I share my screen. Sure. Okay. Oops. Oh, spoiler alert. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Annabel, and I'm grateful to be able to share my experience as a software engineer today with you guys. I'll focus a little more on my experiences in interviewing and some lessons that I have learned during my journey working as a software engineer in a startup company. So if I may have your attention for the next few minutes, let's just dive right into it. So just reiterating with what Kai said, I was a former public servant who studied chemistry and then decided to career switch into software engineering with Rocket Academy. And I am also currently working at a startup, but I will leave my startup story for later as well. So I heard that the recent FTBC just graduated, and so congratulations for graduating bootcamp, but now what, right? So I think it comes the arguably most stressful part of the bootcamp journey, which is finding a job. So when I had to start finding for a job, there are quite a few doubts that came in. So it was like, oh, I just ended bootcamp, but the amount of knowledge that I've gotten from a bootcamp, is that enough to make me a competitive job seeker? I also don't have much experiences. Should I like continue to create more solo projects before I start finding a job? So if you are feeling somewhat this way, don't worry. Chances are your peers are also probably feeling the same way. But my advice to you is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So not sending your resume over means that your chances of getting that particular job at that particular company is already zero. So Rocket has technically prepared us pretty well with targeted projects that highlights a certain type of tech stack that is generally in demand. So just trust in the work that you've already done and then just start firing your resumes out. Like every time you open LinkedIn, just apply a few, that kind of thing. But as for me, my interview journey, I can only classify it as a roller coaster ride. So yes, instead of that GIF saying 4 types of people on a roller coaster, it should be 4 types of emotions I've experienced while finding a job. So if we go in order, right? Number one was just like, okay, heck it, I'll just start applying, throw my resume out there and see if anyone actually takes a look at it. Then after that, when you start applying like crazy, and then suddenly you'll be like, oh shit, I got a reply. Am I ready for the technical test? Have I done enough lead code? But then it comes at a peak and then it suddenly just goes down into a descent because you've applied for so many openings, but everyone just ghosted you and you feel like that's it. I'm never becoming a software engineer. But then finally at the end of the tunnel, you're like, oh my God, I got an offer. So I'm pretty sure that everyone will go through these 4 kinds of emotions. And I've actually interviewed for about 5 months before getting a job in my current workplace, but it was really difficult because I had to step out of my comfort zone and attend developer meetups to expand my network and hopefully secure an interview at a company. And also I had to repeat interview answers that sounded like a mantra coming out of my mouth. And I also had to endure the fact that I was pretty bad at lead code questions. So I practically failed quite a lot of like the online assessments, which was a bit defeating, but still I had to carry on because I've already decided that I wanted to career switch into software engineering. But the bright side was that I had my PTBC mates and my job scrum mates who were also moving in the same direction as I am. And there were Rocket seniors that were also sharing their experiences and cheering me on, which definitely made it a lot better during the interview process and journey. So you can see the statistics. I've actually applied to 157 companies. I've only gotten a reply from 31 companies. The ones that I moved on for second round and more were only just 4 companies. And I was only offered I only got an offer from 2 different companies. So yeah, the statistics are quite staggering. But precisely on the 5th month of applying, I've actually obtained an offer letter from one of the companies that I was really interested to work with because they were dealing with a very interesting industry that I was very willing to work in. So I will leave it as a cliffhanger because I wish to share a few interviewing tips for you guys. So if you have attended your first interview, you may realize that it's a bit daunting, but based on all the interviews that I have attended, none of the interviewers actually want you to fail. They are genuinely interested in bringing you on to the next stage of the interview. So they really want to help you to pass. So case in point, there was an interview that asked me rather theoretical questions about JavaScript, and there was a question about creating classes. But I was so nervous to the point where I actually blanked out and I told the interviewer, I don't remember anything about classes. I cannot remember how to create classes. But the interviewer didn't mock me or didn't shorten the interview. In fact, it was one of the longest interviews I've ever had. Instead, he told me to like just Google and explain what I knew from the examples. And I thought I actually bombed that interview because he asked me to actually Google and then show him the examples that I have seen and then mirror those examples to create the classes that he was asking for. But I actually made it to the final round of interview. So that was something very surprising for me. So I realized that a majority of the interviewers were also really very encouraging, excuse me, and they gave me time to think through and go through my work before explaining it to them, which made me a lot more comfortable during the entire interview process. Also, for the majority of the work that you do as a junior software engineer, it's highly improbable that advanced data structures will come in handy. So this means that if you have to sit through an online technical assessment that gives you hard, medium to very hard questions, I would feel like it's a red flag, because if it shows that this company only values your technical prowess rather than your understanding to actually solve a problem simply and quickly. So those kind of companies I would tend to avoid. And also, let's face it, you have to do a hard lead code question. I think that's quite defeating as a junior software engineer. So these are actually one of the two major takeaways that I've had from my interview journey. So right now, it is time for me to finally arrive at my first destination as a software developer, which is at Kasagi Labo. So its vision can be summed up into the four words that you see on the screen: bridging anime fans everywhere. So I've been watching anime since I was 7, before anime was considered cool. So being able to work as a developer that deals directly with anime IPs and wanting to enter the anime industry in Japan is really exciting for me. So we are currently in the early stages of developing our product after months of iteration experiments. So I'm really excited to bring our product to the mass market and make a difference in the way people actually consume primary and secondary content with regards to Japanese animation. So you might be wondering, right, what do you do in an anime company? Do they really need software engineers? So this is a day in my life as a software engineer in Kasagi Labo. So the things I actually expected myself to do is crunch on tickets, ask senior for help on blockers, nervously sit through PRs while someone reviews line by line of code and probably leaving a lot of comments, and then finally pushing code to production. But what I actually do on a day-to-day basis ever since I stepped into the company about 11 months ago, it's all about communication. So I communicate with my teammates on technical decisions and problems before working on it. I communicate with our product managers to discuss about the scope of the project, the feasibility of the project, as well as prioritization of capabilities with regards to the product. Communication with designers on clarifying with user flows. How does a user log in? Why would they follow a certain flow when they log in? What happens if they click on a certain button? Is there supposed to be an error case? What are the edge cases? How are we going to design those kind of cases? And then we also communicate with our stakeholders on product progress. So our stakeholders will usually be the leadership who wants to see how the product is being progressed as we continuously build it, so that they have an internal timeline of, okay, we are at this particular stage right now. What resources do we need and what our priorities should be with regards to the product. And then at the bottom, you can see it's very small, but it says write code. So technically, I only write code, let's say 30% of the time on my day. So if we stretch it to like 8 hours a day, I technically write code for like, I don't know, 2 hours, but the rest is spent on communications and meetings. So yes, I feel like communication is key. And this is one of the few things that I've learned as a software engineer. You can see it at the bottom there. Communication skills are much more important than your ability to code. But first, let me explain the other tip that I have learned while working at Kasagi, which is it's better to do trial and error rather than read all you can from a specific documentation. This is because you probably do not need to read documentation from cover to cover before implementing a particular capability into your application. You don't really need to read documentation from cover to cover before you feel like you're confident enough to implement a certain package or implement a certain capability. So for my case, right, I have once spent half a day reading documentation before deciding whether it was worth it to implement the package, which my lead wasn't too happy because he literally said, you could have just installed the package, try and make it work. If it doesn't make it work, uninstall it and try another package, which made a lot of sense at that point in time. I was like, okay, yeah, I actually spent half a day not doing anything and just using my eye power to read and assess whether it actually works or not, which is not the case because we are building things and there is a timeline to creating products, especially when you're working in a startup. So yeah, and of course, the second lesson was what brought on the previous slide. I've always imagined that developer work, you'll just be sitting in your little corner and then you just grind your tickets out, and then when you're done with it, you can just sip, I don't know, sip some whiskey and then be done with the day. But that's not really the case, even as a junior developer. Communication skills are very important, much more important than how well you can actually code, actually. It actually Communication demonstrates your ability to explain your problems to different people in such a way where they're able to understand your problem, figure out what solutions you have tried, and then offer you a different solution so that you don't get blocked for so long. It also demonstrates your ability to code, because writing elegant code that has a one-liner that does multiple different functions at the same time um, isn't something that is really encouraged, because if the next person reads your code, they might not be able to understand it. So sometimes the best way might not be the most optimal way. So you might need to write simple code and then also write JS docs into your code. So there's a lot of explanation to do while writing your code. That's why I think communication skills are a lot more important than your ability to code. So with that, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I will be happy to answer whatever questions you have. And if you guys want to connect, here's my LinkedIn. Sadly, our company is not hiring for now, but I do hear that there are positions opening up soon. So if there are, I'll keep you guys posted with regards to that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Annabelle.
No worries.
Thanks for sharing the personal experiences and tips.
Yeah, I hope that will make people, I don't know, feel better a little bit. Because
Yeah,
I've
it's
been
tough.
there,
It's
done
tough
that.
for everyone. Yeah. Zihao, shall we have Zihao go next?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Hao. So I'm basically graduated, I think about 1 year ago from PTBC 3, just as when I was starting my TFIP journey. So today I'm just going to share my career switch journey from being a digital marketer to software engineer, currently working in UOB. So different from, I think the two other, Annabel and Yaping, right? For me, I didn't really have to go through a lot of harsh interviews because I joined a TFIP program, which is basically a traineeship program under IBS. So the purpose of this program is basically to train people for mid-career switchers to become software engineers and then place them in financial institutions such as bank, etc. Because because they need all these people to help them to change the industry. Yeah. So I graduated from with a degree in life sciences, and I actually explored many different paths. From research work, market consultancy to digital marketing, and eventually from my previous work as a digital marketer, because I have to implement this thing called a pixel, when I help my company to advertise, I realized that, hey, it's actually very interesting. So I chanced upon Rocket Academy's, advertisement, and then I decided to enroll for the part-time bootcamp course. Yeah. So, and then long story cut short, I got accepted into TFIP with UOB back in 2023. Yes. So this is all all my amazing teammates from PTBC4. Yeah. Okay, so let me just share some of the pros and cons of TFIP. So when I was graduating from the bootcamp back in 2023, I realized that the market, there was a lot of uncertainty, and there was also a lot of layoffs in tech. So I decided to actually join a traineeship program so that I get to experience myself, get exposed to real work project, and also at the same time get a traineeship allowance, which is actually quite good. You can actually Google about it. Yeah. So, and I thought it is actually a very good opportunity for me because I get to learn and get paid at the same time. So during my learning, I was actually attached under NUS, and we had to learn Java and Spring Boot, which is different from what we learned in the bootcamp. Yeah, because most of the banks and financial institutions actually are more towards Java, and they use Spring Boot a lot, especially Spring Boot and Angular as well. Yeah. So for me, I'm consider myself lucky because during the traineeship itself, I actually get to work on real projects, because if I compare myself against my peers, right, who is also in this program, I realize that some of them are actually not doing any relevant software engineering related work, which is a kind of a pity because you don't get to really practice what you have learned, And I realized for them it may be a waste of time because we are all career switchers and we're actually wanting to transition ourselves into becoming a software engineer. Yeah, so it is really important if let's say you're interested in TFIP, during the interview process, really have to ask your potential supervisors and team really on the kind of work that you'll be doing in the banks. So for me, I'm considered lucky because I joined a small team which is actually in the mid office in UOB. Basically, what we do is we are trying to develop applications for other software developers to use. So our work is not really client facing. And we basically try to reduce a lot of manual work that is currently being done in the office, because in banks, right, a lot of things are still actually pretty traditional and a lot of Excel work, which is actually a lot of error prone and takes a very long time. So that's why the company decided to set up a small team to actually help to automate many processes so that it can be fast and also more efficient. Yeah. And one of the biggest pros, I believe, for this program is there's a potential career switch conversion opportunities. And currently, I'm actually in the midst of converting myself to get a role in UOB. Yeah. So the cons is, yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, you'll be doing, you'll be really unlucky if, let's say, you'll be doing irrelevant works during traineeship. So that's why interviews with the potential boss is important. And then the process itself can be very fast paced and intensive. So like different from bootcamp, right? We actually learn on own time, own target learning. In this TFIP program, we have actually a total of about 6 tests, and we have to pass them. So if we fail like more than 3 times, we get kicked out from the program. So it's actually quite rigorous and very intensive. Yeah. So if let's say, so for me, I think because I have some prior background in coding because of my training with Rocket Academy, so it is actually relatively okay for me. I can still, take things out pretty quickly, even though we are learning Java and Spring Boot, which is different from what we learned in the Rocket Academy bootcamp. Yeah. So these are basically some of the tech stack I use. So mostly I'm actually using Django, which is Python-based framework, and then also Angular, which is TypeScript-based framework. And of course, my day-to-day operations will be same as Annabel, clearing tickets and trying to complete the task as fast as possible during each sprint. And for me, most of my work is still involved around coding. So yeah, so most of the time just stay in front of a computer to code and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so for me, these are the few tips that I've learned from my experience so far in this traineeship. So I believe that we should all learn the basics and then master the fundamentals, because more often than not, we'll be actually using different framework as we progress in our career. So for example, during my NUS training, I was actually learning Spring Boot. But then when I transit myself to UOB, I actually have to pick up a new framework, which is Django, that is Python-based. So I believe, once you have actually mastered the basics, you will realize that actually, regardless of the language, each framework is actually around the same. The basic framework is there. So really just focus on the basics and focus on writing good quality and simple to understand codes, so that all your teammates will understand what you're actually trying to do when they review the codes together. For me, I also believe that debugging with codes is also a very important skill, because more often than not, we'll be trying to resolve our own bugs in the codes, and especially for like new software engineers, right? Most of our codes, when we first write it, will be very prone to bugs, etc. So the most important part is really learn how to research online using Stack Overflow or even using ChatGPT to find out the codes, the bugs. So for me, I like to use ChatGPT actually, because I think it really speed up the process of trying to find the bugs. Yeah. And then we also have to take note that, we don't just learn how to code, because, in the long run, right? It is more like, for instance, what you want to be for your career in the long run, because, being a software engineer, in the future, you also need to climb up and become a management, etc. So there's 2 tracks, whether you want to become a technical track or management track. So I believe that there's a lot more things to learn besides coding. You have to also focus on communication, and also getting yourself visible in front of your bosses. Also, it's also something that we also have to take note, rather than just code all the time in front of laptop and do our own work. Yeah. So for me, I think embracing imposter syndrome is also something that is we need to learn, because as we come from some of us may come from a non-technical background, and we first join this industry, it may be very daunting, especially when your teammates are mostly computer science graduate and they are probably more technical and better than you. So for me, I really think that how we can actually embrace this is basically seek a mentor in a group and really adopt the right mindset, and basically try not to feel bad about it, and really understand, just deal with it with a positive attitude. Yeah, really seek feedback from your colleagues, etc., constantly to improve yourself. Yeah. And then debugging is an important skill. So for me, Murphy's law, anything that can go wrong will always go wrong. So this is what I learned during my work in UOB. So most of the time, especially for those who, sometimes we like to use ChatGPT to develop codes to help to solve a bug, but sometimes it is not really that easy, because if you don't really understand what is behind that code and you just copy and paste inside, most likely then or not, you result in more bugs in the future. Yeah. So really take this as a learning opportunity, and I believe that really, if you debug well, right, you can really learn much more. Yeah, so that's all for my presentation. So I have no, interview skills, etc. to share, because for me, it's really quite straightforward. Yeah, with UOB and TFIP. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Zihao, for the tips and for the walkthrough of your experience with TFIP and UOB. I'm sure there'll be some questions on that later.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to Yabing's presentation before we do questions.
Right. So,
All right.
As the only non-scientist among the three speakers, I'm happy to say that I do have some tech experience as the CTO, cat treat officer of my household. So I studied government and law when I was in school, and the program I did was a liberal arts program. So it was supposed to teach us how to learn, so that we do like lifelong learning. So back then, I didn't really think very hard about what I wanted to study. I did think about doing a technical discipline, but it was too popular back then, so I didn't manage to enroll in the necessary classes. So I ended up with a degree that includes only soft skills like paper writing and reading really, really long and boring articles and doing presentations, which was actually pretty useful in my previous career as a civil servant. So I initially really loved the job and I found it really meaningful, but over time, I started to see that I wanted to apply more logical thinking into my work life and do less of the management. So hence I thought about transitioning into a more technical career, and I started thinking about it pretty early. So I went to all the tech meetups and talked to different people, but only in 2023 did I make the official first step into career switching by enrolling in the bootcamp. And so I just started working as a software engineer about 7 months ago in August last year. So during the bootcamp, I never really expected to become a master of any tech stack or framework. I just thought that it would be a great challenge to do something full time. So as I enrolled in the full time bootcamp, I wanted to force myself to really do coding 8 to even 12 hours a day, and then see if I would hate it. But in the end, I didn't really hate it that much. So hence decided on the career switch. I got into a problem solving mindset. So I think from what I've heard from people before I embarked on the career switch, when you're working as a software engineer, you're always dealing with problems. And hence being able to figure things out and being comfortable not knowing things is really important. And I think bootcamp was a really safe learning environment to get into that mindset. So if you're feeling frustrated, if you feel like doing projects is really hard, that's what it's supposed to be like. Like even senior engineers, they struggle with that day to day. So you're not alone, and it's okay to not know things. So during my job search, it was slightly demoralizing, but I guess based on what I've heard from the other speakers, this is quite normal. So I applied to about 250 plus jobs and about 10 interviews. So by interviews, I would include any form of assessment, including like lead code and like HR screening and all other kinds of interviews. So the hit rate was about 4%. But on the bright side, fewer interviews means I didn't have to burn a lot of time preparing and actually doing the interviews and just focus on a small number of interviews that I had. And I personally found it to be a very subjective process. So the companies which are screening you, the people who made the decision whether to invite you to interview, and even after all the assessment, whether to hire you, they're not subject to any kind of external standard of fairness. So if they don't select you, it's nothing personal. And sometimes I have definitely found some of the reasons why I was selected for interview to be somewhat strange. So if you want to find out about it, you can ask me later. So in preparing for the interviews, and doing the interviews, I found it really helpful to constantly ask for feedback. So I had an experience where I spent really a lot of time, putting a lot of effort doing a take-home assignment. It was pretty beefy, like they asked you to do a front-end like mini app, and then they asked you to do a back-end assignment, and I spent so much time on it. And then when the person replied to me to say that I didn't pass, I was pretty upset. So I replied to them and said, like, can you give me some feedback about how I can improve on my assignment? And then this person got back and said, oh, sorry, we screwed up our scoring system. You actually passed. And then they invited me to the next round. So I feel like, okay, yeah, so it's good to really ask for the feedback because you don't stand to lose anything. Even if they don't reply, you're not losing anything. And if they do, you're gaining more insights, and sometimes you're getting a second chance. So please be brazen and ask for it. And I personally also found it really helpful to rehearse the interviews. It really helps with the nerves. And at first I thought I would try to rehearse with some test interviews with companies that I definitely don't want to join, but those companies didn't invite me for interviews. So I had to figure out some other way to practice at home. So what I found useful was that when I got invited to interviews, I just emailed them to ask try to get more information. Like for example, if it's a panel interview, what is each round about? What kind of question are you going to test me on? And then the more I found out, the better the rehearsal will be because I get to practice exactly the same type of question that they plan to ask me. So the one thing that really didn't help was that all my interviews kind of cropped up around the same period of time. So I had sometimes like more than one interview per day during like the week. And I was really eager to go for those interviews. So hence I scheduled them to be as early as possible. But it really didn't leave me a lot of time to prepare for those interviews. And I found myself like feeling really rushed and sometimes showing up for interviews feeling not prepared at all. And I feel like that's mostly a psychological factor that might screw with your mind during the interview. So I thought, yeah, on hindsight, maybe it would have worked better if I just let them wait and then give myself enough time to prepare and feel calm during the interview. Okay, so right now I'm a software engineer at Ascenda Loyalty. So we develop loyalty solutions mostly for big financial institutions. So the things we do are like, say, we allow them to have a points conversion system so that their customers can get points if they spend money, for example. And we provide the software infrastructure to make that happen. The framework we're using is Angular on the front end and Hanami, which is a Ruby framework on the back end. I have used neither before I interviewed for this company, but they were reasonable enough to not expect any kind of like proficiency in either. So they actually interviewed me in TypeScript and yeah, mostly TypeScript and some of the data architecture design stuff. So I didn't really have to demonstrate proficiency in these. And once I started working, they gave me some time to ramp up, to read all the documentations, and to start with some simpler tasks, which were curated to be beginner friendly before I started to fly solo. So on a day-to-day basis, so the things I do would include picking up tasks that I find interesting. So we do have the flexibility to decide what we want to work on. If you're interested in front end, there are front end tickets. Interested in back end, there are back end tasks. And one part of the job is also to review other people's code and to be reviewed to try to improve. So this screenshot here is an example of one of the earlier tasks that I picked up. So I was pretty sure that I wanted to do like a slightly bigger tasks. And people told me that you have to do an Angular component task before you're considered an Angular developer. So I said, okay, let's pick one up. And I just chose like the first one. But it turned out to be a slightly more complicated component with like a lot of form fields, different validation rules, like data time picker. So I struggled a lot and I got 157 comments in the end. But it all worked out fine because the reviewer was very patient. And I think when you join a company, it is also your team's job to make sure that you have adequate help and adequate guidance to be able to do the job effectively. So I started accepting this as a normal observation during work to receive feedback. And instead, I actually found it to be really helpful because some of the things that I really didn't know that I didn't know, I learned those as part of receiving comments and feedback. Okay, so finally, I would just want to end off with some like tips and observations that I've had in terms of like career development and where we can go after we become software engineers. So I saw this post on LinkedIn that I thought actually makes a lot of sense. So the insight is that for software engineers, our skill distribution doesn't really follow a normal distribution, but log normal. So this orange line here. So most of the developers are actually clustered over here. And this includes not just bootcamp graduates, it can also capture university graduates and like other people who enter the industry. And then only very few can progress over the hump and into the tail. So if we really want to be truly resilient in the job market, we need to distinguish our skills and make ourselves one of the best engineers out there so that we don't have to be in the hump. So these people might be in trouble if the job market shifts and we need fewer engineers. But if you're over here, you'll be fine. So hence, I think for me, my focus for now is to improve my hard skills. So this can include, say, just from a day-to-day work basis, deal with the code reviews seriously, accept the feedback, and also like ask for more feedback so that we can discover our blind spots and learn more. It also includes like learning outside of work. For example, attending meetups to check out other people's talks. It can include reading books on the side. And you can also take tutorials, just like watch those short YouTube videos on the side to further develop your skills. And it also means that besides like learning, we should also not like ignore visibility. So at my workplace, if you just like keep your head down and code and your bosses don't know what you're doing, they might not know that you actually have the good skills. So what I found really useful is to like showcase what you do, speak up when there's a chance to give a presentation, put your hands up and do it, and you will get noticed eventually. And what I also found was that having the previous experience doing something different was actually very helpful. So I was told this by different people in an organization. Like people would say things like, oh, the question you asked was very different from what other engineers was asking. That was helpful, thank you. So I thought, okay, so maybe my perspective coming from the outside, being someone who has always like used only soft skills, was somewhat helpful and can set you apart. So I think that will be true for many of you as well who are switching into software engineering. And I also found it really helpful to be proactive and ask for things. Like for example, if you get comfortable just doing, say, tickets, then you can ask for feature ownership. So I did ask for that, and I was given that opportunity, and I found out that actually it was just a very small step up from doing tickets. You can also ask for getting sponsored to attend conferences so that you can get more learning opportunity. And if you really want that promotion, you can ask, like, what else do I need to do to get that promotion so that it helps you progress more quickly. Yeah, so in general, focus on upskilling, and then don't ignore the visibility and the communication elements of it. So that's all I have to share.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Yabing. That was great. Thanks for all the tips around your interview experience and your working experience as well. Yaping also gave a talk just this past week at Ruby that she shared in the alumni at the Ruby meetup that she shared in the alumni chat. So yeah, hopefully more of us can get opportunities to speak at meetups and attend each other's presentations too. Okay, we have time for Q&A, and so I want to turn everybody's attention to the Slido link. And so if you have questions that you had from the speakers earlier, um, feel free to post them there, and I will be monitoring and moderating that. Okay. Cool. So maybe to kick things off, I thought one point Yabing shared was interesting, right? Around how you were saying that most engineers are in, there's a lot of engineers who may not be as strong, and then there are a few engineers who are really strong, and we want to be on the strong side. And you were saying that you're to get there, you are honing your hard skills and always trying to learn, always trying to ask for feedback, always trying to ask for bigger pieces of ownership at work. Yeah, I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a bit more, like for those of us who are just graduating from boot camp, how especially before while we're applying for jobs, how can we make sure we continue to improve and make sure we stand out while also preparing ourselves well for interviews?
Okay. I find that when we're just interviewing and trying to get our first job, for me, it's I think it's totally fine to not expect to be like great at something. And also I'm lucky to be in a team where my teammates are happy for me to fail and just learn. So I think for now we can just focus on like getting into the industry, and then after getting into the industry, we can focus on improving. So besides the tips that I talked about in the presentation, I would think like specific to your job, just reading other people's code, and then trying to find a mentor. Like there are a lot of seniors in the industry, and just because someone is senior and has the tenure doesn't mean that they're someone that you want to become. So you need to like try to sift out the people who write like excellent code, who have that like really sharp approach at problem solving, and then you can see if you can get them to mentor you and to just ask them like, how did you get here? But I would say if you're curious enough, it shouldn't be an issue. I think the issue would be more of like, say, after you get the job and then you just do like what it takes to survive at the job. If you do more than that, I think eventually you probably get over the hump.
Nice. Yeah. Like try and do more, basically. Try and figure out what more you can do for the company beyond the specific stuff that you've just been asked to do. Right? Okay. Gabriel has a question. To all speakers, what's your next personal target in career growth as a software engineer after landing your first role? Maybe we can go in the order of presentation. So Annabel, Hao, Yabing.
For me, I think my first few months working as a software engineer, I was more concerned with databases as well as front end. Given that our product is becoming slightly more mature, I think there is an avenue for me to dive into the backend side of things. So our technology stack for the backend basically covers quite a bit of AWS as well as Docker. So I am probably positioning myself towards being a DevOps engineer while trying to convince my lead about that. So I think DevOps is quite interesting, especially when you're trying to create a large scale application, or rather we are trying to create a large scale application. So a lot of debugging, a lot of testing, a lot of rules, permissions, authentications, authorizations, these kind of things are actually quite interesting to me to know how everything works on the back end so that we can serve different kinds of content through our product to our users. So I think that will be my next personal target.
Awesome. Hao?
Yeah, so for me, currently, I'm still upskilling myself. As of my next personal target, actually, I have been interested, always been interested in AI stuff. In fact, I've actually applied for some online masters by Georgia Tech. So for me, I think that will be the direction I will be going as well. But for now, I'll just be focusing on my, upskilling my work in get more familiarized with the tech stack I'm using. And also because currently our team is still considered pretty small, most of the infrastructure is not up yet. So I believe that will be a really good opportunity for me, especially because I will get exposed from the beginning until the end when everything is developed and get mature in the team. Yeah.
Thank you. Yabing?
The risk of sounding very cheesy, my goal is to get promoted. But okay, I'll elaborate. So like when you want to get promoted, you need to like perform at the next level. So like for now, the expectation I have for myself is to already perform at the mid-level engineer level, which means like owning features, like participate in like say hiring of like junior engineers and interns, like developing like say a deeper proficiency in at least one of the tech stacks. But I feel like it would be exciting to move to the next level, to like subject myself to the expectations of the next level, which I think would involve solving bigger scale and more complicated problems, like deeper technical problems, and like knowing things when other people don't. Like say when you have a very intractable problem, you definitely look to the more senior people to know how to solve it. So yeah, I want to be able to put myself in the position to be expected of that.
Yeah.
And I guess the promotion will come if I do well. So yeah, that's my goal.
Thanks for sharing. Yaping had a question. How do you position yourself as a suitable candidate if the role's tech stack is not something you have experience in? I think everyone here is working with a tech stack that is beyond what we learned at Rocket. Would anyone like to answer this one?
Stab at it. Okay, so I think for most of the interviews I've done, my skill set that I acquired during bootcamp was at least somewhat of a match. So it's only the job that I eventually took up. The tech stack they use was completely different. But the way they designed the interview was that they allow you to use the tech stack that you're familiar with to solve most of the problems. And they have a database design round to see if you're able to solve a backend problem that is similar to what the engineers encounter day to day. And to solve that, you don't need to use any tech stack. You don't need to code. You just need to draw the database relationship diagram. So I guess if they really, really require you to know a tech stack you don't know, you could try to negotiate and say, I know this is something else. Can I use that to solve the problem instead? And I would think it's reasonable for them to accommodate that, as long as they have the expertise to evaluate your solution. So you can try to ask for it. And other than that, like make sure you're prepared to answer non-code related questions and impress them. Like, yeah, for example, you can impress them with your DB diagram drawing skills. You can impress them with how much you have researched into the company. So like there are other ways to make an impression.
Ifa, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Gabriel, did we answer your question earlier about the next steps? Okay. Awesome. Jasper has a question. Yabing, are there any full-time junior positions at Ascenda? I see an internship opening, wondering if it's a viable path for bootcamp grads.
We usually have some graduate level positions open, but I think the ones which were open before was filled, but I would expect there to be more opening soon, because I think like around the time when the uni grads graduate, that's when most companies open up those positions. Yeah, for now, we do have some internship opening, and I think you should just give it a try and apply. So I have been interviewing interns, and I can say that those interviews are a lot less stressful than like full-time positions. And if you get in, then you will have like the option to decide if you want to take it or not. I'm guessing the pay wouldn't be great, but it is a very viable pathway to becoming full-time, because a lot of our engineers started out as intern. And like, I think one of our directors started as an intern, like some like 8-10 years ago. So it is, I think it's worth a try. Yeah. So if you are interested, feel free to ping me. Maybe I'll like leave my email or something.
Awesome. Jasper, does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Thanks. Yabing had a question for Zihao. What irrelevant work were you asked to do during your traineeship?
Okay, so for me, I didn't really get to do any of those. I heard from my peers who are working with other banks. So it could be, for example, working on like if, for example, just being a writing test script, like being a writing unit test, etc. So, for example, I mean the most extreme case I've heard is some people were assigned to being a customer service team solving, I don't know, but they are not in the development team. Really important to
Got it.
to find the right mentor. Yeah.
Answering. Does anyone else have any questions for our speakers today? When does TFIP open, Zihao, this year?
I think usually mid of the year, about June or April.
Okay.
But I
April.
heard that, yeah, I can't remember. So usually it's at the middle of the year, and then it drags all the way until end of the year, then they conclude the result.
Okay. But for those applying, they need to start in June, right?
Yeah, usually they will announce it through social media and everywhere. So yeah.
Good. Any other questions for our speakers? Okay, I hope this is not this is not like this is 1 hour is your only chance to speak to people here. I hope this is just a start. This is like an introduction. And I hope for people who have follow-up questions in the future that you can reach out to our speakers on LinkedIn or any other contact methods that they choose to share. And hopefully, yeah, everyone can continue to ask each other questions throughout our careers as we progress as well. Cool. Before we break for the day, I'm mindful of time. I know it's almost 9 o'clock. I would like to take a group photo because this may be one of our last AMAs, and well, we take a photo at every AMA, but if those who are here, if you could on your camera, that'd be great. Thanks, Indra. Thanks, Ifa. Okay, last chance, a few more seconds if you'd like to on your camera. Okay, we're gonna take a quick group photo. Thanks, Alvin. Good to see you. Okay, ready? Let me take one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we'll just do one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you especially to our speakers. Thanks for your candid sharings. Thanks for everything that you've done for the Rocket community and continue to do. Same goes to everyone here. I would love to hear your feedback on the session. So if you have any thoughts or feedback on the session, please just DM me in Telegram. Would love to hear from you. And I will also share the LinkedIns and any other contact details from our speakers afterward. Cool. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.